Shalom, Saints. The following is an opening statement I wrote for a debate I recently had with Carlos Xavier on the question, Is Christmas Christian? On the Standing for Truth channel. I took the affirmative in this debate. In other words, I argued Christmas is Christian, and I thought this opening statement would be of great edification to all of you who may not have actually seen the debate. Before I actually get into the opening statement, I want to, as I did there, explain what the opening statement is meant to do and what it was not meant to do. I will not be refuting commonly argued myths of pagan origins, and will not be refuting these myths because there is nearly 24 versions of them, and at the time that I wrote this, I did not know which versions Mr. Xavier held to. I also think it's important for us to look at the logic the Scroogist, or those who hate our modern holidays, employ, so that we can realize that this logic, actually even if granted, doesn't really prove anything. Therefore, I felt it was only reasonable that I save those refutations for my rebuttal time when I had it, and instead used this time to make a positive case for the holiday, as well as to refute the general logic of some common Scroogist beliefs. The latter is what we'll be doing in this video. With these qualifications, I think this leads nicely into our first point, and let's get right into it. Running the spread. One of the central pillars of Scroogism is what I've termed here running the spread. Running the spread is when those who hold to a certain position present multiple and often contradictory claims about why such and such a thing is sinful or unchristian or pagan or what have you. Imagine a child who broke a vase and claims that the dog is the actual culprit. When pressed on the matter, he switches up and says that the cat actually broke the vase. He later explained that a ghost broke the vase and then later says that his little brother broke the vase. Obviously, likely none of the accused actually broke the vase. This is what I have referred to here as running the spread, a name I take from an offense used commonly in the sport of American football, designed to spread the opposing defense so that they can't focus on a single player. It likewise spreads your opposition so that he can't focus on just one claim. It's a quite effective offense, but in debate, it's only evidence that your position is untenable. Why? Because if your position was legitimate, you would only need one claim. If the dog really broke the vase, there'd be no need to blame your brother, nor blame your cat, nor blame a specter, nor blame any other potential culprit who could have conceivably broken the vase. The fact that the child accuses all four or more is evidence that he's just trying to give someone the blame, as long as the blamed party isn't he who actually broke the vase. So how do our Scroogist friends go about running the spread? Well, go online and you'll be sure to find a laundry list of claims about this or that pagan holiday which Christmas is supposedly derived from. In my personal experience, I have come across 21 different alleged pagan origins of Christmas, the most popular of which are Yule, Saturnalia, Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, often called Sol Invictus, as most people barely even know what it is, and the birthday of Semiramis, but less popular of which are the birthdays of various religious figures and gods, such as Lao Tzu, Zoroaster, Jupiter, and Mithras. And this here is not an exhaustive list. I'm sure you can see why I didn't even attempt to debunk all these until I knew which ones Mr. Xavier would be arguing for. But whichever he meant to argue for, and whichever your opposition means to argue for, I suspect there's actually going to be more than one, by the way. You can find scores upon scores of different Scroogists who will take different theories, each one fighting against the other, each one equally and demonstrably wrong. And much like the child who's blaming the dog, then blaming the cat, and so on and so forth, the Scroogist is only exposing his viewpoint when he and his cohorts give so many different contradictory theories. If Christmas was really Mithraic, why would they need to argue it was Yulean? If it was actually Saturnalian, why would they need to argue for Dies Natali? By running the spread, the Scroogist confirms what we already know, namely, that no legitimate argument can be made for these popular myths. They are simply throwing darts at the wall and seeing which ones stick. Date similarities. Another pillar of Scroogism is the argument X pagan holiday was celebrated on December 25th, or its equivalent, therefore Christmas must be based on X pagan holiday. Now, I can say confidently that there is no known pagan holiday which was celebrated on December 25th, at least not before Jesus' birthday was already a well-established celebration on December 25th. In other words, there is evidence that Dies Natalis and Yule copied Christmas, not the other way around. However, we won't be dealing with that, and we did deal with that in the rebuttal if you'd like to see it. The very logic itself is actually faulty, as two holidays having similar dates does not in fact prove or even suggest a link in origin. Consider the following. There are only 365 days in a calendar year, 366 every leap year, and thousands upon thousands of various cultures have existed throughout history, including in the modern day. Given these facts, what are the odds that any given day has at minimum 2 disparate holidays being celebrated on its occurrence simultaneously? I'll tell you, The answer is 0 to 1, or stated otherwise for those who don't know odds, it is 100% certain. Here's a challenge for you. Go to Wikipedia and type in any random date. Any random date at all. Do it twice more just to prove the point, and maybe once again for February 29th, as that only happens once every 4 years, and that will really bring home the argument I am presenting. No matter what combination of days you all choose, you will find multiple holidays celebrated on those days. Holidays completely unrelated to each other, celebrated in numerous different cultures. And this won't even include those celebrated in the past. Check this out. All right, so as you can see here, we have March the 3rd pulled up on our Wikipedia page. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down to the holidays and events section. And what do we find? Numerous holidays celebrated in numerous different cultures. We have some Christian feast days, such as a feast day for Anselm, Duke of Friel, or however you say that. I'm sorry, I probably mispronounced it. Feast day for John and Charles Wesley, a feast day for Winwallow. We also have some days that are in no way related to Christianity or even the United States of America, some secular, some not, like Liberation Day in Bulgaria, Martyrs Day in Malawi, Mother's Day in Georgia, Sportsman Day in Egypt, so on and so forth. Next, we pull up April the 12th, and again, scrolling down to our holidays and events section, we find, once again, a list of holidays in various cultures. We have Cosmonautics Day in Russia. We have Yuri's Night in International Observance, which is actually meant to commemorate the same thing as Cosmonautics Day. Halifax Day, a secular holiday in North Carolina. And again, a list of Christian feast days, such as a feast day for Pope Julius I, for Zeno of Verona, and so on and so forth. Moving on, we have September the 28th, and again, we scroll down to find our holidays and observances. This one is a particularly popular one, especially for Christian feast days. We see John of Dukla, or Dukla, I'm sorry, I probably pronounced that wrong. Faustus of Riez, again, apologize if I pronounced that wrong. Convul, and so on and so forth. Also, some non-Christian days, such as Czech Statehood Day, Freedom from Hunger Day, International Day for Universal Access to Information, Teachers' Day in Taiwan, and so on and so forth. Lastly, I did tell you guys to look up February 29th. So here we have Leap Day, which I guess is a observance in and of itself. But nevertheless, we scroll down to the holidays and observances section, and we find that there is a Christian feast day for John Cassian. We find that this is also Rare Disease Day and Bachelor's Day in Ireland. So there you go. 4 different random dates on the calendar, 4 different lists of disparate and unrelated holidays. By the way, even the Jewish calendar falls victim to this fact. Google the history of the Sabbath, or Rosh Hashanah, or Shavuot, for examples. So, given this fact, what would it prove if any pagan festival actually had fallen on December 25th before Christmas was celebrated? The answer is precisely nothing. El Zilcho. There is a finite number of days on the calendar, and therefore a finite disparity in the dates of the holidays various cultures celebrate. And ditto for any man's date of birth. What are the odds that hundreds of figures are born on any given day on the calendar? You all already know the answer. It's 0 to 1, i.e. 100%. This gets a little more comical when you consider that virtually all pagan cultures did not use our modern calendar. Well, actually, technically none of them did, as ours is a calendar less than 500 years old. But even those who used its ancestors are incredibly few and far between, and do not include many of the cultures responsible for various Christmases this pagan day holidays. This argument, which will assuredly be employed by any Scroogist you come against, is a terrible one, and should be dismissed out of hand by any serious student of history or theology. Similar customs. Another common objection we hear from the Scroogists is the argument that such and such a custom is pagan, or is similar to a custom which is pagan. Much like the previous argument, there is no claims of this kind which have any evidence to support them, insomuch as there has never been any Christmas custom demonstrated to derive from the pagan ones. But again, we push this off to the rebuttal period in this debate, and if you would like to check that out, there will be a link in the description. Here, I'd like to focus on the insufferable logic of it all. Do similar customs demonstrate that one group got their customs from the other? Certainly not. For many customs are so ubiquitous as to be merely evidence that we are all really human. For example, have you ever heard the argument that pagans on X holiday gave gifts to their peers, and that therefore such gift-giving customs are pagan? You may have heard the very same about feasting or using foliage as decoration. But these are simply things that human beings do, whether pagan or otherwise, in every culture that I can think of, and there is no reason to assume that these very vague customs have any nefarity beyond this. Have you ever had an anniversary dinner or a pizza party at work? Don't you know that's called feasting and that pagans did that? Or have you ever given gifts to the little ones as some kind of reward, or maybe for their birthday? Well, don't you know gift giving is pagan? Surely you're seeing my point, but please do suffer me to belabor it. Do you know of any holidays in which feasting doesn't take place at some point, whether before or after or during the celebrations? Can you count on one hand every holiday where gifts aren't exchanged? I know I can. How many housewives do you know who decorate with leaves in fall time, or other such foliage in the summer? And this can get more absurd if we consider the customs which go unnamed in these debates. For example, are you aware that pagans pray? I guess that must mean we shan't do so. And are you aware that pagans marry? I suppose that we shouldn't do that either. And did you know that some pagans shave? I guess at least I'm off the hook for that one. But my interlocutor in this debate was pretty clean-shaven, and I assume some of you are as well. Of course, many pagans didn't shave, so maybe all of us are in sin and nobody can do anything. My point is simply, well, pagans do X is an objectively terrible argument if it is one of these vague customs or if the custom cannot be demonstrated to derive from a pagan one. Pagans do lots of things that every person does. It is not as if pagans are secretly buffalo or pterodactyls or some other non-hominid species. We are all human, and ergo, we all do human things. Now you may say, what about more specific customs like Christmas trees or Santa Claus? Suffice to say, I was not going to be addressing specific customs in this argument, as again, I did not know which specific customs Mr. Xavier would be arguing against. And much like running the spread, specific Christmas customs like ornaments and mistletoe and Christmas trees are very widespread and disparate depending on which Scrooges you're talking to. Do know that I have rebuttals ready and will probably prepare them for next Christmas season. But for now, I just want to end this section here. Similar customs do not demonstrate shared origins in custom. The Bible never says. The argument that the Bible never says to celebrate the birth of Christ is well and good, if all you mean by it is that you are not personally obligated to celebrate Christmas, which is true. But if you mean more than that, for example, that I am not to celebrate Christmas, then I must inform you that the Bible also says to never take a breather on those Twinkies. Nor does the Bible make a single claim about investing your coin in penny stocks. And Scripture is oddly silent on whether or not you should get online and argue with folks about whether or not Christmas is pagan. My point? Scripture is not an exhaustive list of things you should or are permitted to do. We should not be saying, Scripture does not tell me to do X, therefore X is a sin. Rather, we should be saying, Scripture does tell me that doing X is a sin, therefore X is a sin. The Bible does not contain an exhaustive list of do's or cans, but rather an exhaustive list of don'ts. Biblical birthdays. The last faulty argument we'll go over is the Scripture only shows unrighteous pagans celebrating birthdays argument. This argument is not used by all Scroogists, usually only those who are specifically against birthday celebrations. Obviously, Christmas is Christ's birthday, so if birthdays are bad, then Christmas is also bad. This, for starters, is really only partially true. It is true that the only portrayals of birthdays are celebrations being held by pagans, kind of, more on that in a minute, Gentile men at least, namely Pharaoh in Genesis 40 verses 20 through 22, and Herod in Matthew 14 verses 6 through 10. But only one of these men is actually shown to be wicked. In the Pharaoh's case, note that this is Joseph's Pharaoh, who makes him the vizier, he is shown to be somewhat just and wise, and is even typologically meant to represent the father, Joseph his right hand being a representation of the son. Or at least, that's what exegetes and scholars have said throughout history. So it's really not true that every birthday in Scripture is celebrated by the unrighteous. And this is even ignoring the fact that Herod's paganness, technically speaking, is up for debate. He was the king of the Jews, after all. But secondly, this is not a proper way to interpret the Scriptures. The Bible portraying something as being done by a bad man, or even representing a bad man, does not necessitate that the thing being done or representing the wicked be itself bad. For example, did you know that every hunter portrayed in Scripture is a negative person? Whether it be Nimrod or Esau or Ishmael, hunters are portrayed as those who are against God and his people, while, conversely, his people are always portrayed as being shepherds. So, I ask the Scrooge amongst us, is hunting a sin? We could also go to the subject of dogs. dogs are almost universally representative of debauched, sinful men in the scriptures, most often homosexuals. So I ask, are dogs evil? Is dog ownership evil? And don't get me started on all of the symbolism surrounding Moses' death in the wilderness. The point is, evil men doing things in Scripture does not mean that the things they do are necessarily evil. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. It may be symbolic, poetic, or even just a historical fact that they did something. It is not an indication per se, that is, in and of itself, that we are not to do such and such things. Now, I am neither a prophet nor the son of a prophet, but I can all but guarantee you'll see all of these faulty argumentations at play when you argue with the Scroogist in your day-to-day life. When you see it, you can rest assured that it is indeed very faulty. But we have one more ace up our sleeve, and that is that we can make a positive biblical and historical case for the Christianness of the holiday season. If you'd like to see more of that, subscribe to this channel, and we will be presenting more content for you soon. Hey, you, sir and or madam who is potentially watching this video. If you look there or there or there or somewhere on this page, you will see that I actually have a book out called 15 Questions for Calvinists Answered. If you would like to get answers to some of your pressing questions as a non-Calvinist, or to some of the questions non-Calvinists are pressing you with as a Calvinist, please do consider checking the link in the description below, where you can purchase either paperback or digital copy of my book. And again, that is 15 Questions for Calvinists Answered. And please leave a review whether you find it helpful or not so much. Please remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Shalom, saints.